back to Georgia Peachcast, and we are coming to you, as usual, from Cherokee County, Georgia. This is Pat.
And this is Will.
Tonight we thought we'd do a kind of wrap up of things that have been happening recently. Ongoing tariffs are beginning to hit now, known as taxes, regardless of what anyone says and the administration, they are taxes.
Yeah,
We
so
like we like to remind that we like to remind people, although the increase in taxes on everybody, it's usually the lower and middle class that gets hit because we tend to buy what we need, food and electronics, groceries, cars, not yachts, because the other half of or the other small 1% who will get hit with the tax, it won't bother them the kind of you know pain it will cost the average middle class and lower class people.
right. Would it
Yeah,
help to kind of go through what a tariff is and how it works and what it's supposed to do and why, like, especially now, these like wild percentages just make no sense at all?
yeah, and so yeah, that's gotta that's the boats are what is it? There's not a single delivery boat on the West Coast
No,
for the
yeah.
last couple of weeks almost, and the East Coast is going to get hit pretty soon now when they stop coming through the the
I don't remember which coast it was, but I remember seeing that its final shipment came in and it was mostly pharmaceuticals, like medical
oh
supplies,
really? Okay.
medicines, things like that. Yeah.
And when was that?
I That was very recent, possibly today.
Okay, but that was the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that
and
was
there's not a lot of them backed up. Like at one time, I know that there a lot of them when things were hot and heavy in the economy before Trump. Okay, they were actually lined up out in the ocean. They were backed up trying to get into the courts.
yeah,
The
thanks to
ports couldn't hold them enough of them. Now now they're empty, and it's the other way around. We go up and down.
isn't it great?
Yeah.
Do we want to go through what tariffs are real quick, or what they're supposed to do, like the intent behind what a tariff is supposed to be and why we had them initially? So let me give you an example here. Say I don't know, staplers. Let's say America wanted to make staplers. Uh, America can make a stapler, but it costs them $3.50 to do that. Versus China, they can produce it for $2.50. So America will place a $1 tariff on those staplers so that the competition will be the same between the two. And that'll kind of drive the competition between American and, Chinese staplers to be about the same. They could possibly tariff Chinese staplers to be a little bit more to kind of drive in American sales and, bolster their
Yeah.
stapler industry. But doing just casting an open net of, okay, everything from China is going to be like 250%, which is absolutely crazy.
Uh,
And there's no industry here to substitute for it.
no.
So it's just nonsensical.
And even the dedicated, very specific tariffs, okay, have to be careful that they don't go so much out that you're just not going to automatically start making and producing product here, manufacturing or any kind of product at all in any short term period. It
No,
takes years to get that built up.
it
And so, yes, you can. Tariffs have been good. In fact, I know that. Remember that a lot of the tariffs that were placed back in Trump's original first time, okay, a lot of them were kept by Biden
right,
because they were reasonable to some degree.
and
They may have been,
that's the key. They have to be reasonable, and there has to be like a
and
long term goal for
they
having the
have to be
tariffs.
targeted. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But to think, first of all, and it goes back to I've got the history on this. To say that you're going to start to manufacture something that just can't be price wise, can never be matched by China. In my day, it was Japan. I worked for the industry, for the semiconductor industry, and while I was working there, and that was the late '80s to 2000, okay, we saw all of the manufacturing of semiconductor chips move out of the U.S. to Japan, not to China at those days, not Korea, but to Japan. The company that I was working for was they stopped manufacturing them here in the U.S. Now, even after they built a huge plant in Salt Lake City, they moved it all over to Japan. And even then I said Japan was then, and sooner or later it would be China. And I'm telling everybody, and I'm a little bit, I probably won't be around long enough to see it, but eventually, manufacturing is going to go to India. Okay, India's doing a lot of software stuff now, but okay, eventually manufacturing is going to go there. They got too many people they got to put to work,
Mhm.
and then after that, if things start to ever get settled down, sooner or later, maybe years and years from now, but Africa will end up being doing some of that manufacturing, and it's not going to be. It's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. Corporations want to make profit, and the way to make profit is to reduce the price of the cost of the product or the service.
Right.
Yeah, and they're just not going to, we're not going to start paying, manufacturers, $15 an hour. Not when they're making 25 and 30 now,
Yeah.
or automotive making more than that.
It's
So
these random nonsensical tariffs are going to crash the economy if they haven't already.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Suspiciously, if there are no tariffs on Russia, just thought it worth mentioning.
Everybody knows it, but you
Hmm.
know, still, although his support is starting to wean down, and his approval rating, especially on the economy, is starting to really go down. So
Yeah, he's got the worst
yeah,
approval rating at the 100-day mark in American history
yeah,
ever. Even on his first term, he's doing worse than that.
yeah. So we'll wait and see on that one. The other one that's really been that I was going to bring up was the executive orders that he's pulling off. Yeah, executive orders. He's going to create. What I'm saying is, he's going to create situations that are going to take a long time to turn around, even if the courts block them or Congress finally gets off their butts and does something about blocking.
Right.
Hey, back to the tariffs. The way I understand it, the real control over what traffics and who gets trafficked has to go through Congress.
A lot of these things have to go through Congress.
Right,
The executive was never meant to create laws.
right,
They're supposed to enforce it.
yeah. And that's the point. They can be reversed. His A lot of them will, but they'll take time, and they'll do long term. Some cases they're going to do long term damage.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's going to, you can stop them, but some of that damage has already been done. Look at all the things that they've already, cut back on: education, science, research. The thing with taking the money away from Harvard just because I, my opinion is that he probably tried to get into Harvard and never, and they wouldn't, his marks wouldn't let him get into Harvard. So after all, I don't know. That's a personal, that's a fun to think about. But the other really scary thing is the national security. Yeah, he's cut back on funding for that.
He's cutting.
Forgetting about the funding that's been cut back for the World Aid Organization. You know, I know that a couple of people I know, their sons, two people, in fact, their sons work for nonprofits
Mhm.
that were a one of them was getting 50% of their total funding was coming in from the government from that.
And that can't be a tough, decision to make. Like, okay, we have half the budget that we used to. Where, what do we prioritize and what do we cut? Like,
Yeah,
that's just
right. And where, yeah,
daunting.
and even if you can figure out how to start to get different ways to get some of that, when you get half your income or half of the money coming in, or the funding that's coming in, is all of a sudden disappears.
Right.
It just doesn't come around quick to find it. A lot of work has to be done, and that's going to take a long time. In the meantime, you're right. What do you what? How do you prioritize food for one group versus food for other, health, medicine for one country in Africa versus another one. Which one do you cut? How
Hmm.
much do you cut? That's the kind of thing that's long term. And again, to turn that around, why that you stop if they stop because they don't have the fund, they can't buy the food that they need in the volumes that they need to feed the people in Africa or wherever. Okay.
But Mark Zuckerberg needs his fifth yacht, or Jeff Bezos, or Elon Musk, or all these ultra billionaires.
Yeah.
So so
There
gross.
is empathy. Everybody agrees. There's no empathy in the administration right now
No.
because all of the cuts are going to go to the low end of everything. You know, including doesn't matter whether it's education or you know or food stamps or military. Actually, cutting the military fund too.
That is just boneheaded.
I had yeah, being I've been in the military, but never really had to rely on any of the money that's come in from the military. I wasn't in long enough to do that, although I got two benefits out of it. But um, you know, I've always said that we just never paid enough. We never put enough money into you know military. Doesn't matter whether it's their hospitals, you know, the money that was goes to families for housing while they were in the house never was enough.
Right.
They actually I remember that actually some of those families were had to get food stamps, which to me is
That's
outrageous.
yeah.
That a veteran or somebody in there has to have their family get food stamps. That's
That's
not right.
that's twisted.
So yeah, I hadn't even got into that one, but that one we could probably talk a long time on that one.
That's an episode in itself.
What's that?
That's an episode in itself.
It is. That's the point. There's so much as we talk about so many programs and things and content is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So much content out there to keep talking about, and it's not going to go away for a while. The other one I had on my list was guns and gun violence. Okay, back to executive orders. They've shut down the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, an executive order to gut the gun safety policies. They repealed the ATF's zero tolerance policy, and he's gutted the funding for community violence and domestic violence prevention programs.
So I, as a layman, I guess, for lack of a better word, what do some of these programs like do?
I honestly, other than the gun violence, I've been a little bit involved in two major things here in the state, and one that were in the state legislature to be passed or looked at. One was gun safety, and it really was a matter of how you gun home safety
Right.
to keep the guns out of they were wanted to we wanted to put some laws in effect that would keep guns in the home under lock and key if
Yeah.
that
Safe, out of reach of children or
right
whoever should not have
right
access to a gun.
and typically as it is with almost any other gun legislation that somebody brings up or tries to pass they hold off. They don't want to do that because they've used the words the slippery slope. They're afraid if they pass anything that's under gun control, gun safety, the next thing is going to do is they want more. And that's probably there are some, I have to admit, I'm sure there's some people that just as soon go all the way and get rid of all the guns. Not necessarily the Second Amendment, because it is an amendment,
Right.
but there is probably some small percentage. But the majority of the people who want gun control and gun safety, okay, many of them are gun owners themselves.
Right.
They don't want to they don't want to get rid of all guns. They don't want to get rid of the Second Amendment. They just want responsible using of guns, the responsible guns that you can buy and and check and have background checks when you're buying guns. All of those are responsible and seems to be generally common sense ones, but the NRA's have so far has just always used the fact, that was guns. The other thing that I found I was going to do today and I didn't do it was there was they talked about children, the number of children killed by guns, and I have specific numbers that for 2020. Yeah, in 2020, the last numbers that they put together, the number of children in the U.S. were killed by guns was like 4,300.
Jeez.
The next, you take the total of all 10 of the major countries in the world, okay, and that totaled out to about 120
Like all the other
altogether.
countries. Wow.
Altogether, it was absolutely surprising. So we're killing over 4,000 children by guns, and the rest of the world altogether is pulling out maybe 120. So it's
That's
yeah,
grisly.
and so but everybody's been saying that since Sandy Hook. How do we justify not doing things to and they've tried to put. In fact, I think the Georgia State Legislature just passed something about school safety, didn't they?
I don't know.
I think so. I think there was something that just did pass or was brought up. Whether it actually passed at the time before the legislature finished up this for this session, it was something to do with with school safety regarding things that were necessary against for in case somebody came in with a gun.
Right.
Okay, so they go after that the same as they've always been trying to say, rather than when they find somebody that's really gone wild and killed a whole number of people, that it's people that kill people, not guns. Except that argument to me never holds water because the rest of the world, okay, has people in it the same as we have,
Yeah.
and yet their numbers. I'm sure I know I've got somewhere in my research over time the number of mass shootings in the world compared to ours is, again, it's like the same thing, same percentage that I just talked about, children being killed in the U.S. versus the other. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah. If
And
you want to make the argument that guns don't kill people, people kill people, you do have to understand that guns are have one purpose and one purpose only. You point at something and it dies.
yeah,
Like
and you're right, and that's and exactly the point. And there's a lot of countries. Canada has a lot of guns. Germany has a lot of guns per thousand people, or per 100,000 people.
but I'm sure they're not just, as lax on their gun laws as we are.
Yeah, no, they're not, and they don't. So they are responsible. They've got things under control to the point that they do it, and so and again, they've got people, and I'm sure they've got sick people that need to you know that could go rampage if they had the guns,
Yeah.
but they don't have the guns. They were controlled. They watched. They make sure that people who have the guns are responsible and do all of that. So they've put all the things in controls. So it's the amount of, not the amount of guns, because we got more than anybody else, but there are some other. Again, I remember Canada has a lot of guns
Yeah.
capita. Do you know one of the things that people don't understand what per capita is.
That's
Go ahead.
that's per person, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's per person, so it doesn't matter, if they've got less population.
Yeah.
It's based
It's
upon per person.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, but people don't seem to understand that, and they start to judge things because they say, well, we're much larger, and than Lichtenberg or some little country someplace. But that's not where the comparison. The comparison is per person or
Yeah.
per thousand people.
And until that 43,000 number drops to zero, we have a gun problem that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah. So yeah, I always like to talk about that as being reminding people that that's what per capita is. Um, yeah. Did I say something about Pope Francis? Not
Uh,
yet. What?
no, we're just getting there.
Okay. Yeah, this is just it's a general comment that's going on. The Pope, after the Pope Francis has died, that the selection of his successor is now in place, called the Conclave. Did you see the movie by any chance, the Conclave?
No, but I have heard of it.
Yeah, it did very well. I saw it. I thought it was very very good. Even being an ex-Catholic, I realized that there was things that I knew took place, but not the details. They got into pretty close to a lot of the real world details.
Right.
Yeah, it still was a movie, but it was a movie. But the real world is going on right now, and I know that a lot of people in the world looking to Pope Francis was he brought something that hadn't been brought to the papacy in a long time, and that was of course he was first American or
I think he was
Not American
Argentinian.
North. What's that?
Wasn't he Argentinian?
Yeah,
Or am I
he
making
was
that
he was
up?
out of South. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. He was out of South America. So he was one of the first Americans.
I will look it up.
I say Americans between that meaning between North America and South America to be a pope. But he was on. He had a lot of policies that many in the world wanted to see happen, and so there is a hope that maybe his successor will be similar to him anyway.
Yeah, he was the first Latin
Latin
American pope.
American, right?
He was from Argentina.
Yeah. So and I think, as I was telling you a little earlier, I think that the betting that's going on, I don't know if it's just this country, but we just like to bet on things, everything and anything. I was just reading the betting that was going on. They're betting on who's got the best chance to be the next pope. And
I feel like the rise of sports betting and just, gambling in general in the United States is also a podcast episode.
yeah, I don't know. Do you know? Is it more so here in the U.S.? Is gambling?
I've noticed it a lot more in the past few years, and
Yeah,
that might be because I'm young, but
yeah.
the I
I think my impression is that the Far East, there's a lot of gambling over there.
right.
Yeah, but I just don't know about Europe. To be honest with you, as a whole, someday I'll take a look and see if I can find some numbers to that effect. But yeah, that was interesting. They've got the two top favorites. Okay, one is a little bit more. One is an Italian who's conservative, and the liberal one is I think out of the Philippines. I think. Don't
Yeah, I,
don't quote me on it, but
that's what we were talking about earlier.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's those. They've got the top two.
Let me look that up.
Yeah. So wait and see. It's but the movie was very good. Again, being an ex-Catholic and knowing about the conclave, but never knowing a lot of the little details that they incorporated in the movie.
Yeah, the guy you're talking about, Luis Antonio Tagle, is from the
He is
Philippines.
from the Philippines.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I
Uh,
hope I pronounced that
that
right.
was right. Yep. We'll wait and see. Wait for the the smoke. Do you know that the smoke thing?
Yeah,
Yeah, white smoke if they pick them, and if they go through a couple of votes and it's not, then it's black smoke.
yeah, they just
Yeah,
had some black smoke,
yeah,
so they have not decided the Pope just yet.
yeah. So we'll have to wait and see what color smoke. Well, the color smoke only indicates whether they had enough votes to have one person.
Right,
Okay, yeah. The white the so that's what the black smoke is. If they had a vote and it didn't work, the black smoke goes up.
right.
And they finally get the white smoke, then we've got a new pope. So uh and this one's really to me is probably the most troublesome of what's going on right now. It doesn't matter where, is the fact that the administration is just flaunting the rule of law. They're just ignoring it. In fact, I heard something about the attorney general in Florida, he was absolutely just ignoring some law, something having to do with immigration. Of course, that's where the biggest stuff that's
They love
going.
to just ignore the law on immigration,
Yeah, yeah,
especially.
right. There's actually the court in his area. I don't know if it was a state, okay, or he was a county district attorney or something. He said flat out, no, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to,
Yeah.
abide by the law.
Uh,
To me,
Pam Bon
that's scary.
yeah, Pam Bondi ignored a 9-0 Supreme Court decision to bring back Kilmer Borrego Garcia.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of thing is scary. And Trump saying, he's repeatedly saying he can interpret the Constitution the way he wants to interpret it.
No.
So anything he wants to you know, fit the wording is uh, his wording into whatever he wants done is the way to do it.
And until the Supreme Court shuts him down or Congress does something, I mean,
Yeah,
they got to enforce that. Otherwise, he's right.
yeah, it's right. That's what's scary. Is the you know the Justice Department is under them. If the Supreme Court says something, who's going to put him in jail? Who's going to pick up somebody? Not necessarily Trump, but who's going to pick up somebody that wants a law and uh, and gets called on a contempt of court, and the judge says you're going to go into jail for 30 days.
Right.
Okay, who's going to put him in there? You know, nobody, nobody that. So that's why that whole thing is scary more than anything else. You know, and of course back to the. I was going to mention that too. As far as I know, right now, next week we will do a section on immigration.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm pretty sure we're going to have somebody that's going to talk about. We'll have a guest on that's going to be talk about immigration. Um, she's the one we're trying to get for sure. Is she's been involved in it quite heavily, so she could speak better for it than either you or I.
Right.
Yeah, and again, due process. The Constitution says that everybody has a right to due process, and both Trump and now I saw just today the Secretary of Homeland Security
What
has
the?
refuted. Yeah, I know. Has refuted to has refused to. Sorry about that. Has refused to admit that what the Constitution says
Can we
to
can we just
everybody have right.
can we just start that over?
What?
Can we just start that bit over from Secretary?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, you did?
No,
Yeah,
I mean, can we?
yeah. Okay. Yeah, scary. And then the
Well,
last. What's that?
what I'm saying is, can we restart that last part
Oh,
when the phone
okay,
was ringing?
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, the Trump saying that he can ignore the Constitution or he can interpret the words of the Constitution to fit something he thinks he can. Actually, he has said that he could find reasons to ignore the Constitution.
Which that's
He
not true at all,
Yeah,
unless
but that's in his mind. That's what he can do,
yeah,
and he has refused to admit that in the Constitution, the right to the right for everybody, the word everybody, with no exceptions, has the right, to due process.
yeah.
Which,
That terminology right there is not every citizen; it's everybody,
that's yeah,
every single individual.
yeah,
And even so, how would they know that somebody is an illegal immigrant without due
right.
process?
They don't.
There's no way to
They,
tell.
no, because they've been making that mistake already.
Yeah,
They've been put
multiple times
right.
with different people, like all across the country. Yeah,
That's all across the country,
awful.
children included.
God.
One family had they sent they sent a family a child back without he had cancer.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's exactly the problem. The problem is you don't give due process willy nilly. But again, that whole concept of ignoring the rule of law, of ignoring the Constitution, thinking that you can just do what you want is the scariest of all.
Right.
Everything else is bad, long term, short term, whatever you want to say. But that one is scary because in the meantime, people's lives are immediately being in jeopardy. And who knows the ones that are being sent to, is it now Guatemala or is it
It's El Salvador, and
Salvador?
they're wanting to do it in Libya too.
Oh, okay. And now, and the funny one is the funny one he wants to put Alcatraz back up on.
Yeah, which allegedly they played a movie with Alcatraz in it the night that he said that. Which, if you ask me, it's just a
Yeah,
distraction from all the other
I know that
shit
one.
going on.
That one's funny, but there's a lot of funny things, and if we don't laugh to some degree, we're all gonna, you know, go hide ourselves, lock ourselves in a closet someplace.
Hmm.
Anyway, the last one I was going to talk about was, the Supreme Court. Apparently, the lower court he put out an executive order to ban transgender in the military.
Right.
As far as I know, the lower court temporarily said that could go, or they were looking at it, and then it got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court also said temporarily that would be okay, that executive order could be in effect affected. Okay, but
So,
everybody's it's temporarily meaning what? In the meantime, you've got people's lives who are in the military who are transgender, and then the long range concern is if they can do that to anybody just willy nilly. Here's my willy nilly thing. Okay, who's next? Are black people, women? Of course, we all know that a good part of the conservatives don't want women in the military. Period.
right.
Or they definitely don't want them doing, or they're flying jets and they're getting blown up. Actually, I know a female. I think I showed you the West Pointer. She
Yeah,
was yeah she was a second only still a second lieutenant. She went to
the first
yeah she
woman to
went
be killed
went to
in.
the forest to Afghanistan or whatever, got caught in a landmine, and and she was dead.
Yeah, Greg wanted us to say her name last time, so I'm gonna find it because I wish I remember her name.
Okay, yeah. So that's again, those kinds of things scary as to if they can just do that and decide that that's the right thing. I think I did see the percentage on of transgenders that are in the military.
It's not
It's
very
less. It's not
high.
double digits, but there's a number of them. And there's also, which I wasn't aware, there's also some of those transgenders are people who were born with, there's a certain word for a condition that doesn't really tell that person whether they're male or female.
Oh, gender dysphoria, I think is
Yeah,
what
something to
it's.
that effect, right? So, it's not a question of choice in those cases. In a lot of cases, it's physical, and if they're performing and can do the job. Oh, there was another one I just heard about yesterday. There's the first woman that has gone through the Marine Special Forces training. She's it's the first woman that has graduated out of the Marines Special Forces group.
Right on.
Yeah, I know. If you can do it, you can
It,
do it.
it sucks that that's not gonna last very long, but
No,
it's still great that she did it.
everybody got to know that the Marines didn't soft soap it. Either
No.
either she
Yeah.
she passed all of the tests and did everything else everybody did, and so anyway. Other than that, of course, my final word was that a lot of what we talked about, even this last one on the transgender in the military, it just fits the Project 2025 playbook right to a T.
Hmm.
So much of what's going on uh, just fits that book, or that, what was it, 600 or 800 pages,
I don't. I,
somewhere in that range.
I honestly don't
I don't
know.
know.
I
I
know
don't
it was big,
know.
which is why I
Okay.
didn't read it.
Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up for today. It's a little short. We were going to have some other people as guests, but everybody's schedule is getting pretty well loaded, so it's a little difficult. So again, as I say, we're hoping next week we'll have immigration as the major subject that we will talk about, and a guest that is deeply involved in that, so she will be able to speak to a lot of the situations and the things that are going on, what to watch for, what to do, what not to do, and where it's really happening. And that would be basically all that's happening locally. But whatever's happening locally is pretty much across the nation.
And because this is a podcast, be sure to like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever else you need to do. And, don't be afraid to get involved in your community. A lot of people are, anxious and don't really know what to do.
Yeah,
And the first step is to, get involved.
yeah. I did have to that point. There was something that I put down for my own self, and it was exactly that. Will it was exactly something that was kind of neat. If I could find it, I would say it would. It was a whole person talk. It was too long to read the whole thing, but it ended up saying just it said the thing that I really wanted to, and I forgot to do that. I'll have to do that again. But it had to do basically the same thing. Take care of yourself. Work with the community. Get out there and do something. Make sure you're doing something, and because my final word would be that doing nothing and saying nothing is really complicit in itself. Have a good evening, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye, y'all.